Thanks for tuning in to the Quantum Yoga Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Rickert. Got a special guest today, Dr. Krishna Madappa, who's a shaman, Ayurvedic specialist, educator, essential oil clinician, researcher, and storyteller based in Taos, New Mexico. Travels globally conducting lectures on science, spirit, and the art of light, and offers experiential learning intensives, GDV training, and retreats, along with small group and individual sessions, enriching and empowering the lives of all he meets. And we're just going to jump right in.
All this encapsulated a universe in a single atom that inspired dear His Holiness, Dalai Lama. You read that book of his?
I have not.
Came out in 2001. The universe in a single atom. Well, that's the source. Aham Brahmasmi. See, Sanskrit, all these harmonics, the reverberations that foster, that permeate, all it is for us to breathe it in. And we are breathing this in using gadgets today. Like this wonderful little gadget, see, the human charger.
Oh, yes, I've heard of the human charger.
It was very interesting because of the explorations with light. And this is transmitting, from blue light, of course, LED, a blue light into the white band spectrum. So that fostering across the entire brain, which is again water. So we enhance the waters within us. Well, what is the functionality? It twinkles, it sparkles. So then we look into these tiny little eyes and we see them twinkling.
So let's start with I'm sure everyone at this point is so fascinated to know who's on the other end of the line here. Dr. Krishna Madappa.
Namaste to my beautiful community across the universe. Now gathered together on earth.
Could you just take a minute or so and introduce yourself to the people who are not already familiar?
Namaste to all. A simple introduction would be, here we are as diversified fluctuations in a unified field, which is the source where all begins. Then we even dissolve from the identity of introductions, because we are all together as a wonderful harmonic symphony of life and light, which is the basis and water on which all prevails. So a little introduction to this guy, Krishna Madappa. Well, it begins, I would say, that when this fellow was in his mother's womb, in this universe, and going through as the process of, as we know now, quantum expansions, my mother recited always hymns from the Rig Veda and also read from the Gita. So these are transmissions that enhance one to our singular purpose of being. And our singular purpose of being, we come, the source of where we prevail, is that little dot. We say, twinkle, twinkle, little star. But there is a beautiful passage in the Upanishads called the Chandogya Upanishad. And that conveys there is a light that shines brighter than all the earth, than all the stars, than all the heavens. And that is the light that shines in the diamond that resides in the lotus of the heart. Hari Om. That was the mantra to which this guy that is now conveying over here during that magnificent period in a womb of a divine mother who transmitted these continued harmonics as mantras. So she chanted them. And she said that when she stopped chanting, this little baby used to vehemently kick. Says, I want more, I want more. So, who is Krishna? Krishna is, well, not only in the same birth star, and it's very interesting because it was Thursday night in the Andaman Islands, which is where my parents were. These beautiful little islands, an archipelago between the mainland of India and southern Thailand. So the Andaman Sea, and so, of course, very pristine islands, because during that time, it was only those indigenous beings, like the Ungis, the Jarvas, the Andamanese, all Karnikobaris, who lived there. So my father, being involved with the forest department for the government, was there. But now, it was a stormy night. It was a very, very stormy night. And my mother was there and delivered a little fellow who was 10 pounds. 10 pounds, very chubby guy, very, very chubby guy. And so lo and behold, all the data was then passed on, and the one who transmits all the Vedic sciences and numbers said, oh, this young fellow was born to the same birth star as Lord Krishna, and when he grows up, it's not happened yet. So it is, he would be living in a land that is far away from here. This was 1940, in the upper end of the 40s. So, but he will live in a land that is far away. His companion will not be from the same community, not be from the same village, not be from the same nation, but from a land that is already there in place. Well, his direction and guidance will be guided to qualitative enhancement from deep understanding of the science of that which is beyond the visible, as his birth star is connected.
Let's use this as a gateway to talking about the science and your years of working and connecting in biophysics as it relates also to Ayurveda and using some devices to actually measure this. Can we start there?
About 2 decades ago, during one of my travels back to India, southern India, now called Chennai, there was a congress. And this was the first congress initiated on pranic healing, Congress. And the founder of the pranic healing institutes and domains in India, he has passed on now. His name is dear Dr. Sundaram. So Dr. Sundaram initiated, and he had then requested if Krishna would give a presentation on the fields of how plants influence the flow of the nadis, the Shushumna Nadi from the Ida Pingala Nadi, and how then this could be utilized essentially as a Tesla coil to connect to that which is abundant. The source field is abundant. It is enriched. It is rich. So Krishna's, at that time, in the earlier period, late 80s, early 90s, I grew up with plants all around me. That was from the Andaman Islands. So, and my father being a botanical lexicon so hence his connection to the jungles and the plant world is flowing through every cell of this guy's being. I grew up around people in the medicine fields from tribal cultures, many of whom did not even have interaction with populations like ours. Now addressing the science. So at this conference, at this congress, dear Constantine was there, and he has just at that time brought out to introduce the whole arena of electrophotonics, which is the observing, because that's what we do. We look, pulse electromagnetic fields, high cascades of photons and electrons that touch the tips of the fingers, or for that matter, to biological systems. But he was specifically there to share the insight on how we measure human energy fields, and also at the same time, the observation of chakras. So our inner energy centers. And of course, this in India is second nature. Why? Because there is a fundamental transmission. What is within us is perfection. The outer world can attain perfection only when the inner world inspires, guides, molds, and shapes the outer world. See, now we triggered Verizon.
Oh, well, you're mentioning so many interesting points here, and just to also let you know, we have a wide variety of listener base. We have people who are yogis, yoga practitioners. They're familiar with the yogic arts and that pursuit. And then there are also listeners that are in the sort of biohacking world that is very scientifically oriented, quantifying physical data, physiological data, and are sort of they're not familiar with some of the yogic concepts, and vice versa. And you mentioned the Sushumna Nadi, and you also mentioned a Tesla coil and a potential relationship between the two. Can you just give us a short overview of what those two terms are?
If we follow the train of breath, we have two nostril apertures. One, the nostril of the left permeates to the right hemisphere of our brain, which is correlated to the intuitive, sensitive to, in an instant, we are always surrounded in the nature of all the five senses, and then also to the domains of the universe, because here we are on a tiny little ball. It's pulsed with electromagnetic fields and magnetic impulses. So we are in this resonant pattern, continuously gathering 0 volts from the membrane of the earth and transmitting 220 to 240 volts from our crown. So hence, when we consider that as the Sushumna Nadi, that is the center on which the structure is designed. But we are, as a Nobel laureate, wonderful being Albert St. Georgi reflected, he said, we will never understand the full meaning of life till we look at the electron configurations inside of complex molecular structures. So when we reflect upon the Sushumna Nadi and we reflect upon the Tesla coil, we are now essentially transmitting this harmonic breathing, and of course it all comes through the nature of the Ida and the Pingala Nadi, which then aligned spears out, and that equated to the Tesla coil, where he had low voltage, transmitted a few million volts, connected this to the ionospheric belt, where there is a continuous output of 300,000 volts. So when you connect, you can transmit this across the circumference of the earth every 6,000 miles, and thereby provide energy to the entire planet, to all human beings. And without wires. Now, the yogis, they cultivated this influence. That's why when they sat in the mountains, like when you think about a yogi, what's the first thing you think of? Is a guy sitting up in a cave in the mountains.
Right.
Right? And just chanting, and his whole what is life? It is the dynamism of our presence, which is what these electron configurations inside of complex molecular systems are. We are based on water and light. So the influence of the question that you brought forth surmises the very root to which we are all here for, is what inspired Tesla after he met with Swami Vivekananda. And the question was, what is Akash? Akash, what we refer to as plasma. That inspiration fielded together, and now we see even this harnessing is definitely a vital current, the Shushumna Nadi, which is what is permeating within the epicenter of the Silicon Valley, which is fielding itself across certain very, very critical specific domains, as what is also occurring in Bangalore, as what is also being cultivated across in various centers around India. The harnessing of this comes together for the topics that you reference to me in the exploration, because we seek that which evokes the center of every being to their fullest potential. Hence, we are not always in the presence of all the, let's call it, because it is all coherent domains or continued coherent, incoherent domains that continue to permeate all around us. So, how did we get together with this understanding of Constantine and Krishna meet for the first time after their respective presentations in Chennai with the Pranic Healing Foundation? Dear Master Choa, who was also there. So I asked Constantine, what inspired you to bring this science of integral wholeness to life? Knowing from that earlier transmission which we conveyed, what is within us is perfection. He said, when you awake to the realization that the most powerful force of all the universe is love, you are guided.
And this sort of segues nicely into talking about chakras and what these are in relationship to this Shushumna Nadi that you mentioned, and what is occurring on a biophysical level.
Oh, what joy will occur at a biophysical level. Because we can just evoke from body of matter to body of light. You see, because that is the basis of all activation. As we know that cell transmissions are by weak photon emissions. This is not only what dear Bruce Lipton was able to explore when he did his PhD at Stanford in the mid-1980s. Wonderful guy, if you haven't come across his work. Dear Dr. Bruce Lipton, his thesis work, his first part was called Biology of Belief. And that led to the next work of his that led to spontaneous evolution. And in this, he made a very clear observation. And in that very clear observation, he said, the body is not a structure. It is a process of consciousness. Now, it's a very bold statement. You know, as a few years, a wonderful emeritus professor of material science, also from Stanford, and his name is Dr. William Tiller. He is now in his upper 80s, and His eyes sparkle and twinkle like what we are talking about. And in one of his first works, the book called Science and Human Transformation, there is a paragraph that says, "We are liquid crystal like receptors of subtle energies that have the capacity to receive information from all dimensions when our two hemispheres are synchronized." So we observe the content, and of course, we must be in the presence of all this in contemplations. And the contemplations are in every moment of not life, every moment that we are present. And we are designed to be present. And if we are not, then let's steer ourselves so that this is what is heightened, which comes to water. So when Constantine said, I know we are navigating between hemispheres of domains, coming right down to the physical plane. When Constantine made that statement, well, that's what connected us as two souls. Our connection it's not the physical process will come and it will diffuse into other states. But what really matters is that we see in each other that diamond in the lotus of the heart. And it is not hypothesis. It is clear. It is precise. There are cultures today that we go and we meet with in shamanistic cultures across this beautiful planet. And there is very clear interaction between heart and heart. There is among a particular tribe, they raise their hands like this, their palms, directed to one's cardiac center or the heart center. And they say, Shungo, 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 transmitting, meaning from my heart to your heart to one heart. And can we measure all this? Of course we can.
Let's talk about the measurement, because I think there's a lot of people fascinated that is even true. How does that happen?
To know this, what I wish to really bring forth is the essence, because everything comes to the essence. In every aspect of what we are fostered in life, always touch the essence. And my mother was very clear in how this was transmitted, with also my father. He said, if you look at the extraction or distillation, let us say, here is a bottle, and in this bottle is a particular, we can call it essential oil, we can call it an absolute, we can call it an emanation. So if this were to be jasmine flowers, a simple example, this is 30 ml, 1 ounce. For 1 ounce, it would take roughly about 500 pounds of flowers to give you 30 ml. So similarly, when you go to bed, when you put yourself into a supine position at night, distill from all the senses that this neurophysiology has observed, received, transmitted in the course of a day till the supine, distill it till you touch the essence as a droplet, place it on your palm, first induct it as your olfactory by breathing it in, and then second, would you drink it? Summarize every moment, because every time we put ourselves into a supine position, which we call sleep, the consciousness can never sleep because it's wide awake. The universe is wide awake. That's present. So when we really go to sleep and our consciousness is also asleep, we are lucky to be given the gift to say, I can wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock or 7 o'clock. when we have these appreciations, knowing that we are a body of light, which we are.
You use a device that you mentioned, Dr. Konstantin Kurakov. You use a device that he created called the BioWell to do some of this measurement. I wonder if you could talk for a little bit about that device, some of your findings as it relates to subtle energy.
So, one of the first basis after my meeting with Konstantin, we did a lot of joint studies together in India and then in Bangalore. As we began observing, Konstantin shared with me the basis of what inspired this direction of what the technology, the science, from the hardware to the software complex. Now the software complex is completely a cloud-based system. But in the precursors, because of its collaboration, Konstantin's collaboration with the Ministry of Health in Russia, and then later with the Ministry of Sport, all this referred to that we are based, and the inspirations of Konstantin came from Albert St. Georgi. He had met with the Kyrillians as a young fellow. Today, Konstantin is maybe chronologically close to 60. So at that time, as a young 26-year lad, he had met with the Kyrillians, who loved this guy, because to Konstantin, this is what came to him, is that this should be for the entire world from the field of medicine, so that the consciousness, collective consciousness of humankind can be aligned to this observation that we are beings of light. Now, why did he say that? Very deeply. He said, we look at the platforms. As you know, the early Russian language and Sanskrit have very deep correlates. They have very, very deep interactive arenas of. So they have, over the years, now this is decades and decades and decades we are talking about. There is deep studies about how is it that the guy sitting on top in the mountains, whether it is in the Himalayas or at Tirumurti Hills, Tiruvannamalai, where Maharishis like dear Ramana Maharishi recited. You know, he never slept. The consciousness is awake. What does sleep mean? So, Konstantin, this is the background. It's necessary to know what was the inspiration, because that to me was most important. Not what we create out here that can bring out, but rather what inspired you to do this, to bring this, to be guided in this space, which we know. So one is looking at the sympathetic parasympathetic system, the way we study medicine today. So if you understand the sympathetic parasympathetic system, that's part one. Now, deeper than that, we go to looking at what is the nature of the flow of nadis. Nadis are all energy centers. And of course, the science traveling to China and the way it has developed to transmit that into very, very precise points across this entire neurophysiology, this electrical influx of information that we call the human energy field, with precise points. You are able to send a microcurrent across a space even faster than the speed of light, which are now known as Bongan points. BONGHAN. These are plasma domains inside of these, ultimately, electron configurations inside of complex molecular structures. So incorporated with the work of a very, very another deep Chinese scholar and, and a PhD who developed the algorithms to combine the first set of algorithms for the sympathetic parasympathetic system, then to design the algorithms for the meridian points. So we look at electrical signals because all this is ultimately the units of measurement are in joules. So as unit of measure, because we are based upon energy, flow of information, flow of light, which is what we measure, the flow of photons in the system. The third introduction was immense work that has been written, transmitted by rishis, then modern scholars like Hiroshi Motoyama, dear Hiroshi Motoyama, conducting extensive experiential work on chakras from the 1960s. And he is now well over 90, but has a wonderful place in San Diego. So on these three platforms is where the development of the algorithms that came through Constantine, and of course his programmers are from the Institute of Optics and Mechanics, which still rates today as the most advanced arena for such computations. So this is the fun platform on which this occurs. So the moment we take data from all the 10 fingers, and now there are over 10 books that are published, available from Amazon, and you can read. So this on this three basis, and of course when we look at the hardware complex, you have a fine dielectric plate, and on this dielectric plate you have a CCD camera, and then there's a electrical impulse that is sent anywhere from 5 kilovolt to 10 kilovolt, depending upon the system that you have. And so for a microsecond, which is why people don't go flying across on trajectories. So for that microsecond impulse, and know that this has been collaborated with the Ministry of Health and then the Ministry of Sports, so you can observe very, very enhanced observations that are then calibrated into every sector of the finger, just like in the finger, what is the micro and the macro, these terms, as above, so below. And of course, we are the universe, that is aham tam brahmasmi. And there is also, this is a transmission in Sanskrit, I am the universe is within me. It's not only Chopra, dear Chopra ji, who shares about this, but this is the fundamental in the harmonics of the Vedas and given transmissions. So among the physicists and explorers like dear Constantine, there has been a generation of them who always see it's not complex, it is the dimensionality of this who we call a human being. So here is a technology, both the hardware complex and the science, that has been so precisely presented. And we are still in infancy in this area, because evolution and this growth will keep on. Because as Swami Vivekananda ji said, when humankind attains a higher vision, the lower vision disappears unto itself, then multitude count for naught. It takes a few beings with infinite energy, infinite enthusiasm, infinite courage, infinite patience, and most important of all, infinite love. That is power. That is the pure presence of power that we are able to observe, of course, with this wonderful system, the biowell. And let's see. Oh, I have it in my lab. Otherwise, but you see here is a biowell there in this poster. So here it is, and these are the output platforms, that are obtained from all the 10 fingers. As you can see, the sectors over here. So you look at the right hand thumb. The right hand thumb will have the sectors that range all the way from the cerebral area to the nose, the eyes, see, hearing, jaw, teeth, throat, thyroid, all that from one. So like that, each and every one of the fingers is given sectors, and each one of the sectors has a precise direction to ultimately what we would call the molecular complex. We bring in the biology to say, this is liver. But we are not looking at liver as the organ. We are looking at the energy of the organ. So everything that we are seeing on this entire platform is based upon the movement of information.
One of the things that this can measure are your chakras. It can actually measure the alignment to the central channel, as well as the amount of energy contained in the chakra. And you've also done, not only in your own practice, but also done some research in India around this matter. Talk to us a little bit about that.
See, we reflect upon one fundamental, is what is within us is perfection. The outer world can attain perfection only when the inner world inspires, guides, molds, and shapes the outer world. So, yes, we today find that in terms of these two wonderful hemispheres that we travel with, there is oftentimes one that may be more heavily endowed than the other. But and that is very observable, and which is, again, there is no valuation. It is purely an observation. You see, it is purely an observation. And the moment we observe the chakras, we are able to see a vast portal of who is ultimately the energy center, because every being must ultimately awaken to live their highest purpose. Whether it takes place in this lifetime or that is because all learning, all education, all of life is to enhance the intellect. Ultimately, and what we observe in the fluctuations that we observe, we call it the condition of sattva, rajas, and tamas. These are gunas: sattva guna, rajas guna, tamas guna. What does that mean? In very simple terms, SR and T. SR and T. So we've taken this and created a wonderful model that is a bell curve. Inner excellence. Can we measure inner excellence based upon principles that are familiar today with organizations in industry called Six Sigma? Six Sigma, which was developed for external excellence, is being guided towards measurement of inner excellence. And this is being very much pioneered here in the US by another wonderful being and colleague. His name is Dr. Pradeep Deshpande. And he was also a chemical and a professor, emeritus professor of chemical engineering at the University of Louisville in Kentucky. And so he's wonderful, very passionate, very, very passionate, and we are all collaborating together. So to ultimately observe the nature of the sattva, the rajas, and tamas, because in each and every one of us, the let's call it the wide awake mind that sees only one, no separation, then that which also resides in saying, Okay, so I do this, and now I can go and obtain this, but then there is attachments that come along. Ultimately, and then you have those from another perspective, what we call the devas, the manavas, and the asuras. These are Sanskrit terms, but each one of them is affiliated with a very visual, not a story, but a transmission, because they convey the nature of mind, from the deep mind to that which, if you look at this as the waters of an ocean, it's always flowing. Even in stillness, there is a rhythm. But the deeper we go, we observe that stillness. So similarly is the nature of the mind. Can we measure this? Can we determine the SRT functions? That is what the whole science of bioelectrography in this field of electrophotonics begins and reveals. Of course, it takes a discerning, not an eye, but a discerning eye, this eye, to really not observe, but rather see. Because if there is even a perturbance in one being, it is one too many. Because what we call the principles of constructive interference versus principles of destructive interference. These are harmonic waves that amplify or they negate. So one being, one thought that has come from the core of one's being will permeate. Nothing can stop it. It will seed itself in those who are ready to receive, to manifest it and bring it to fruition. You see, so this, when we make a reference as a science, it is a science that is of unification, that which brings forth that stillness within, because within that stillness, everything resides as a hurricane. So we can spin ourselves to all, devoid of attachment. Again, that is a universe to discuss on, but it's also a single note, because we need to pair everything to the simple. As dear Einstein said, not simpler. Bring everything to the simple, not simpler. And all this we can observe in the BioWell software. As we begin to unfurl the information, starting from the chakras, one can look at the chakras. See, because you asked that observation to go deep into the chakras. When we do our discourses, our trainings in India, we start at this because it is ultimately the source from where. Here, when we are doing it here in the US, we start by showing that which is identifiable. You see, again, it is that's the whole purpose of these phase transitions that bring together these three platforms of the sympathetic parasympathetic system, the meridian system, and the energy system of chakras.
It seemed like you insinuated that water was the medium in which this was all flowing and communicating. And I know you have a special passion for water. You've done a lot of investigation into it. Talk to us about water and inside the human body, and then leading to everybody that I'm around wants to know, what's the best water to drink?
A universe in a single atom. If you take a droplet of water, so here is a a shared wonderful exploration of Krishna's. This was around 2003, 2004. I was in St. Petersburg with Constantine, where we gather together every year in July for a wonderful congress on science, information, and spirit, usually around the first week of July. So, dear Vladimir Vyakov, a wonderful, wonderful being, great researcher at the Academies of Science in Moscow. And he presented a paper called Reactive Oxygen Species, Photons, Life. And in that, there is a paragraph that goes as follows. If we go into a pine forest and you take a centimeter cube of air in a pine forest, it will have over minus 500 negative ions, which is akin to a wonderful waterfall that we would all cherish and go under, not like the Niagara, no, but a waterfall that, let us say, 15, 20 feet high. And you stand there and you are nourished with these wonderful ions, plus 10 to the power of 16 times the number of molecules of oxygen. So that's a pretty concentrated energy density. So he said, if we took this and translated that into a teaspoon of water, and you immerse this teaspoon of water into a contaminated body as a lake that is 10 meters deep and 30 kilometers in diameter, just deep, which is roughly 33 feet, and 30 kilometers in diameter, 30 kilometers, 50 miles, 45, 50 miles. It will purify it.
It's incredible.
So we make a reference in Sanskrit. There is a transmission called mantra pushpam. Pushpam is that which vitalizes, nourishes, nurtures life abundantly. Water. We are beginning to explore this concentrated teaspoon to one droplet of water to the Kumbh Mela, which has been going on for thousands of years, is all based on water. So when we make a reference to water, if I were to give you the most simplest answer, it is that clarity that prevails within us has the, not capacity, it is a direct coherent influence that begins to transform this body of matter to body of light. We can call it structured water, we can call it informed water, we can give it coherent water. And we are all, yes, exploring this from as many avenues of research through our institute, what we are doing in India, observing this in application in agricultural outputs. And of course, Krishna has been involved in this area for about little over 16 years of research. And observing ultimately that water, the information that is conveyed to the water, we can measure it, we can observe it. Now, that's fine. But ultimately, if we are unwell, then what is our responsibility? To optimize it, isn't it? We don't need to live 50% when we have 100%. There's no valuation or judgment. It is always an inner aspiration and inner inspiration. Because when we attain this higher vision, the lower vision disappears unto itself. To touch that space of stillness like a hurricane, to be at the eye of the hurricane. You can't see the hurricane. Well, that's exactly what we make a reference when we refer to water. Yes, we build devices that can bring forth that which nature does naturally. And we are that. We are gifted with this. We don't need gadgets or devices, really. The Kumbh Mela was based upon immersing yourself into the absolute toxic waste, transforming it. See, this is the basis of another very essential, vital transmission called the Prajna Paramita Sutra, translated to the heart of perfect wisdom. May I recite it?
Please.
Gate, gate, paragate, parasam, gate, bodhi, swaha. So, brought forth is gone beyond the senses, gone beyond thought, gone beyond the thought of thoughts. Hail to those who have illumined these pathways so that we may be nourished, bathed, to bring forth for the manifestation of all light. Travel in peace, and hence the emanation of Om, and live vitally.
Give us all your contact info, how people can learn more about you.
Oh, that's very simple. Today, because of all you folks in the tech world, you just type in the name Krishna Madappa, and that will take you to LinkedIn, it will take you to Facebook, it will take you to YouTube, Pinterest, and did I miss out anyone? Yes.
There are a few
website,
options there.
KrishnaMadappa.com. Yes, KrishnaMadappa.com is a website. And then there is another one, gdvusa.org, which is another website. And these are plentiful. On YouTube, the channel on YouTube is Krishna Madappa, KrishnaMadappa. Yes, there are many, and continue to foster, because ultimately, as we know that we utilize science, we utilize technology that could be vitally to enhance the qualitative wellness to all life, because if human is well, nature will be well. That's essential. And with that, Shall we all now cohere together with a wonderful evoked transmission? Shall we do a collective infusion together so that
Yes.
it is all our waters, because we are body of wonderful waters. So let us, vitalize them. And I'll share a simple exercise that was passed on to me by a very wonderful Tibetan grandmaster. And he said, to first cup both the caps of the ear. So if you were to just and do that, and then close your eyes, just give yourself first a nice wash with your breath, taking a breath in, maybe to the count of 1, 2, 3, and then just giving a wash of exhaling out like a steam engine. So that we've got a nice opened passage. To some, it may take a little longer, but at least let's cohere to its simple principle. So when that field is completely in a space where there is a lightness of presence, and you will naturally feel it with a few that it may take, then with both the forefingers to the little gateway of the ear, taking a breath in, and then you emit the harmonic as which is akin to the harmonic of the sun. We, within us, we will observe a charged presence being fostered, very active and still, that can now be guided, directed, focused into any function to which we are all presented with.
Thank you, Dr. Krishna Madappa, for sharing your time with us.
Oh, thank you, dear Jonathan. Indeed. Indeed. And thank you very much for having hosted this gathering and get together, because it's a very supportive arena that can ennoble, because if education is not guided towards the enhancement of our collective intellect, which means our full system should be present, not half, not three-quarter. While we bring forth the creative endeavors, the dynamics, we should always look into the essential function. How vital is it, and would we drink it while we are in that supine position where ultimately consciousness is that which flows within us in a symphonic melody. And that symphonic melody is the essence of what we would observe in our chakras, which then bring together, which then is then cohered by the domains of water. So we see nature being fulfilled by that, as in the plant world. We see that also with human. And that is the source field. We touch the source field, which is the foundation of all education.